Hey, how's it going, everyone? Rick Rooster here, coming to you with a segment of, I guess you can call it food for thought. It pertains to pretty much letting old wounds heal, and this subject pretty much pertains to every culture, every race, because in some point in time in history, almost every race has been, or every race, even religion, every culture has been oppressed, enslaved, genocidal acts towards it. The Germans on the Jewish population, the history of American slavery. The relationship between Japan and America with the whole, Pearl Harbor and that whole deal. I mean, every nation has had its conflicts with another nation or had its battles. And for the most part, almost every, as far as America is concerned, a lot of wounds have been healed or at least tended to. We have a pretty good relationship with Japan. Now, this is just overall. I don't know about politics and trade deals and all that stuff. Like that's out of my scope. I don't even want to harp on that. I'm just talking about the general attitude of one culture or one part of the world towards another. And lately, Americans, white people in general, for the most part, have been kind of getting, I guess you could say, blamed for a lot of stuff that is not their fault. And when I mean their fault, I mean the people themselves today, not the white American culture or society as a whole, including the past and all that. We all know that when Europeans came to this country, it was taken over from the Indians. That's why the Native Americans. Indians are actually from India. I don't know where in time we decided to call Native Americans Indians, or how cowboys in the movies like to call them Injuns. But Native Americans, this was their land, and Europeans took it over. Now, when the Europeans came here, yes, they brought slaves. Some were bought, some were captured. Regardless, slaves were brought here. And slavery on any race, society, group of people is wrong in itself. Doesn't matter who's the master and who the slaves are. Slavery itself is wrong, but we can't deny the fact that the way it was before this era, everything was built on slavery. The pyramids were built on slavery. Every nation around the world had its privileged, birthright-born people that were up top, and then you had your, I guess you would call peasants, that pretty much just worked to survive, and then you had your slaves. Pretty much they were just born into bondage, not just, from Africa, but from all over the world. And in American history in particular, I like to point it out because I'm an American. So to me, this, I can't speak on other nations' slavery history. I wasn't a part of the American history of slavery in America. I wasn't alive back then, so I can't really speak on what it was like, or I can't be held accountable. I'm not white. Again, I am a Mexican American, but the fact that I'm always generalized as white, because when people first meet me, they think I'm white or maybe Italian or something, but I'm always put into the white category. And so because of that, I speak on it, because sometimes I fall into those categories unwillingly, especially whenever something's going on and they want a finger to point at. I get the finger pointed at me because of my points of view. And I want to take us back, or take us to a different a different dimension real quick, just so we can have some kind of comparison, because you can't just talk about slavery without comparing it to something, so that way it kind of makes more sense. Now, having said everything I just said, let's talk about El Chapo Guzman, the big drug lord. He wasn't your typical drug dealer who would just go from corner to corner and, you know, give people drugs or sell people drugs and everything. This guy was pretty much the main source, or is. He's still alive. And to take out somebody like him, there's a lot of backstepping has to happen. It starts by busting your local dealers, and then those local dealers pretty much either give up, or they either give up or dime out, you know, the people they get their supply from, and then so on and so on, up until you go to the source, who is El Chapo. Now that's for, you know, the drug world. The same concept goes if you're trying to, if a how do you say, a human sex trafficking ring is gonna be busted, you know, these prostitutes who are kind of just, you know, sucked into this life because they were lied to about, you know, coming to them, you know, a lot of prostitution, people think that, oh, these are just women that want to do it for money because they're whores or whatnot, and no, and that's not the case. A lot of times they're pretty much prisoners in their own world, because you have a lot of prostitutes who come from Europe or other parts of the world who were pretty much tricked into coming here, thinking that they were going to come and have some kind of job, whether it was a model or acting or a nanny or something. You know, they come from a low-income family, they're pretty, so they say, yeah, you know, come to America, we take care of you, you know, we got a program over here, whatever. And next thing you know, bam, they get kidnapped, or you know how it goes. You know, I don't have to go into detail. And those organizations are pretty much taken down the same way they took down Chapo Guzman, but they have to go to the source. Who is the ringleader behind all this? Who is the big supplier? Who's the big kahuna? Now with slavery, let's treat that the same way. Yes, Europeans brought slaves from Africa over here, but everybody just seems to think that white people just ended up, you know, just were created to hate black people and enslave them, and that's not the case. They were following suit with a lot of other cultures. I mean, I'm not saying that it was right. I'm just saying that's just the way it was. But let's take that back even further. How did they initially get those slaves on those ships? The majority of those slaves were sold by who? Other Africans, you know? I don't know why, for some reason, everybody thinks that, you know, I mean, Africa is a beautiful country. It has its many beauties. Every region of this planet has its beautiful corners and areas. But like every beautiful corner and area, it has its sour points. It has its, you know, its messed up places. We all know that Africa is not what the Black Panther movie makes it out to look like. There are a lot of areas that are very peaceful and very just, you know, I guess you could say almost trying to be utopian, you know, like this utopian paradise where everybody's just happy, working, they have a system and it works for them. But there are a lot of tribal, and this has been going on for centuries. There's a lot of tribal rivalries in Africa. I mean, where they just go to war with each other because whether it's for politics or military power, whatever the case may be, and they are really ugly towards each other. They don't just fight; they hack off hands. You know, they chop feet off. I mean, for women, they would like if women from another tribe were captured and they were pregnant, they would cut off the nipples of the woman so she couldn't nurse her baby. I mean, it is barbaric, you know. But going back to the whole slavery thing, it was like that back then as well. And nobody likes to point out, well, I mean, everybody's pointing out, you know, Chapo and all this stuff, you know, and for all of these big time organized crime leaders, but nobody wants to point out how slaves were acquired and brought to America. You know, everybody wants to point the finger at white people for slavery when really, you know, they were bought and sold They were bought by white people, sold by Africans, because that's just the way it was over there. A lot of slaves were as well, tricked and captured by white people. Of course, just like any drug organization, people skim off the top. Even though they work for their boss, they might skim some money or skim some drugs off the top. That goes with any type of organized crime, and this is no different. And my thing is, why not, instead of harping just on white people or trying to call out the Africans from back then, why not just let the wounds heal? We can all agree that slavery was and is wrong, but the longer we keep holding on to that notion that one culture is owed something by another culture, there will always be conflict. The U.S. can always hold a grudge on Japan for Pearl Harbor, but Japan can always hold a grudge against America for the atom bomb. The Jewish community can always hold a grudge against Germans. But I mean, other nations have been able to look at the past and learn from their mistakes. Why can't America be that way as well? America is a potluck. America is just one big pot of so many different kinds of vegetables from all over the world. We got to either learn how to get along, or we're just going to kill each other off. Blacks on whites, whites on black. I mean, we're starting to see it now. Race wars are starting to happen. And a lot of those race wars are caused by people who are very, ill-informed. They are not thinking outside the box or thinking of the bigger picture. They're not really getting down to the root cause of their hatred towards these, other people. I just saw on a video of a Hispanic guy. It was at a fast food restaurant. I don't know if it was a KFC or it was something like that. And the video was shot kind of late because the people who were at the table were not expecting this. The video started with the guy holding this MAGA hat, this Make America Great Again hat, that he ripped off of this kid this was a grown adult, probably in his late 20s, maybe early 30s, ripped off the hat of this teenager who was wearing that hat. And he's walking away saying, fuck that, that's not my president, blah, blah, blah. I'm taking this fucking hat. This hat will go perfect in my fireplace. Fuck that. And the kid was just kind of like, what the hell? I mean, this kid was pretty much, in a sense, you could say that he was robbed, he was assaulted, verbally assaulted, threatened, all because of a hat, and that attitude is happening with a lot of cultures. When I was watching Tommy Sotomayor's videos back, I want to say it was about a year ago, right around the time that Trump was still running, before he got elected, there was a video out there. I want to say it was in this black neighborhood in either Virginia or South Carolina, where this group of black guys beat up this white couple, man and woman. They beat up the woman just as bad as they beat up the guy, and it was on YouTube. Tommy Sotomayor showed it. It was horrible. It's what's it called in movies when girls bump their heads or whatever, stuff like that. It's kind of funny, like especially like if it's like a comedy movie or whatever. But in real life, seeing a woman beat like if she was a dude, it really, gives you that butterfly feeling in your stomach. It's like, that's just not right. I don't care how much women want to be equal to men and everything like that. Every man's natural instinct is to not want to see a woman get beaten to death like that. She was beaten bad, and they were laughing. They were talking shit to her and the boyfriend. They were beating the boyfriend up just as bad. Talking about, oh, you in the wrong hood, bitch. Fucking cracker, blah, blah, blah. Fuck that bitch up. Fuck that white bitch up. And they were fucking kicking her in the face while she was on the floor. She probably was already like not even knowing what was going on anymore because she was getting beaten so bad. She was just getting beaten senseless. It was so hard to watch. And stuff like that happens all over the place. There was another video, I think Tommy Sotomayor showed it again too, where 4 black kids were trying to it was 4 white kids that were outnumbered by a large group of other black kids on a pier. And those black kids were not only trying beating up and sucker punching these white kids did not want to fight back. They were outnumbered and they were trying to talk their way out of it. They didn't want to fight. So what did they do? So since these white kids didn't want to fight back, they went ahead and trying to physically push these white kids over the edge of the pier. Now that's more than just assault. That's like, that's like about 20 feet down to the water. I don't know if you've ever fallen on water like without diving, like just fell into it. It sucks. It hurts, and you could possibly drown if you don't know how to swim. And nothing happened nothing was. I'm pretty sure something was done, but it wasn't publicized. It wasn't, made a big deal. And there was that recent story where those four black kids took advantage of a mentally challenged white teenager, and they tortured him, and they Facebooked it live, and it's forgotten. And because there's that open wound that I don't know what's going on. I mean, it's like, why there is this natural instinct hatred towards white people. It's getting ridiculous, and nobody wants to call it out. And I think that if parents, black, white, every culture should teach unity. That's what America is. I don't care about what Trump's motto is. America is about unity. A bunch of different ideas who can come together. They can agree to disagree respectfully, but they don't have to infringe on each other's natural born right to have an opinion. And if I feel a certain way about a rule or a law, and you have a different point of view, that doesn't give you the right to assault me or to commit a crime against me just because we disagree. It's becoming very popular to just get physical whenever you can't verbally agree on something, or when you don't see eye to eye on something. And it's very sad because one of the biggest things that America loves to preach is freedom of speech, freedom of this, freedom of whatever. It's still part of the Constitution, but there really isn't much of a freedom anymore, especially a freedom of speech, if you think about it. Because you can, if you have an opinion about what somebody looks, how many times have we heard that Donald Trump looks like an orangutan, or looks like this, or looks like that, or he looks orange, a comment is made about his complexion? Or how many times have you heard on TV they allow the word cracker, they allow the word honky, and it's funny, it's always used in some kind of comedic way, but you drop any type of you try to make any kind of joke or comment about blacks or Muslims or Islam, right away you're looked at as a racist. And it's getting ridiculous now. Now you can't even you can't wear what you want anymore. Now you can't say what you want anymore. But this is supposed to be a country that you're supposed to be free. That's one of the things that I'm not gonna say I signed up to defend all of these freedoms, but that's the reason why we have all of these freedoms, because people volunteer to serve our country and volunteer to, if so many people didn't volunteer to serve this country, we would have the draft again. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very proud to say that I did serve. I volunteered to serve. I wasn't forced into it, because once people are being forced into the military, now so a lot of freedoms start to get taken away because you're forced into that military and you're not volunteering for it. And going back to what I was saying, there's a lot of wounds from every culture, and we really need to learn from our mistakes. We really need to learn from our past. We need to embrace it as a lesson. We don't have to embrace it as it was the right thing, but I mean, we can also go as far back. I mean, like there's this movie that I like, and it actually makes a good point, The Butterfly Effect. If, in the movie, Ashton Kutcher had the power to, in a sense, kind of go back in time and change one little thing. But then when he comes back to the present time, things are different. Because by changing one event in the past, there was a ripple effect that would cause an alternate reality. And every time he made a change and he tried to go back and fix it, it caused another negative ripple effect. or not negative, but a ripple effect that brought him to a reality that he wasn't content with. There was always something wrong with the new reality that he thought he fixed. And if we were able to actually do that, let's just say the Europeans skipped Africa and they just came here and built everything on their own without slaves. I don't know how America would be right now. I'm not going to say, well, this is what could have, but I could say what would happen. The slaves that were here in America, that were brought here, more than likely they would probably still be slaves, but just still in Africa. We wouldn't have Martin Luther King. We wouldn't have any black culture here. We wouldn't have hip hop in America. Who knows if hip hop would even exist? There were a lot of things that would not be here. I don't know what would exist, but I know a lot of things that would not exist and would not have happened because of that. I'm not saying I'm grateful for slavery. I'm just saying that given today's situation right now, the way everything is, I think we've come far enough to where we can let those wounds heal, and we can, embrace a brighter future by learning from our past and from the negative history that we have. Because yes, America has been built on blood. It has been built on slavery. It's something to be proud of. It's not something to be proud of, but it is something to learn from. How many times have you done something wrong and learned, I shouldn't do that again? It's the same concept, but just kind of a bigger scale, but it's very easy to accomplish. It's very possible, but it takes more than one person or just one YouTube channel to spread this message. Everything starts in the home. Everything starts with the parents, whether it's one parent or both. One parent can successfully raise a good child.